Today we're breaking down 8 ways people can run out of money in retirement and how to avoid them. We'll talk about spending risks, the ones you see and those you don't, hidden forces working against you in retirement, plus why having no plan is the biggest risk of all. Hi, I'm Molly Nelson here with Loren Merkle and Clint Huntrods, and today we're talking about 8 ways people run out of money. And Loren, it's rarely just one thing. Typically, it's a combination of things that can lead to this.
That's exactly right. And I think the biggest reason for that is retiring is not something that most people do multiple times. So when you are looking to retire, it's probably your first time, and there's a lot of things that go into retiring that can be a surprise. So there's just a lot of blind spots that can kind of creep up and derail retirements, and people need to be aware of them.
The complexity of retirement, Clint, can really lead to all of this.
Yeah, a lot of them are easily known, market swings, but other things that maybe are those blind spots could be inflation over time, or the true healthcare costs, or long-term care, an awful lot of things that you need to be planning for to make sure they don't sneak up on you and catch you in your blind spot.
8 ways people can run out of money, but also we plan to talk about how you can avoid them. So that's the good news. Let's talk about number 1, overspending. Guys, this seems like a really obvious one, but it still can be sneaky.
It's the number one fear that most people going into retirement have, is running out of money early. And the number one way to do that is to overspend. So we need to have a real clear picture of what it's going to take for you to live the lifestyle that you want to in retirement. And that should be one of the first things that you talk about or think about as you're developing what your retirement vision is going to be. What do you want to do? How much is it going to cost? And then that information is going to go a long way to making sure you don't run out of money.
I can see where it would be tempting, though, because the early years of retirement are the go-go years. They're the time when you want to probably spend the most money.
Yeah, and oftentimes as families are in their working years, they have the ability to spend a little bit more. They maybe haven't had to keep a close budget for a few years. As they're starting to make that transition to retirement, it's important to take an assessment, really an inventory of everything. We were recently working with an individual to help build out her plan for the first time, and she actually had color-coded spreadsheet that showed the things that she's paying for her kids that they eventually need to take over so that she can reduce her expenses in that transition to retirement. It's something that we see a lot as families are still helping their kids or want to help their kids. They've made so many sacrifices for them. They want the best, but that's something to really evaluate as you're heading into retirement, and every little dollar is going to matter even more than maybe during your working years where you have a little bit more cash flow.
Clint, you let that B word out. You said budget, and that's not a very friendly word to a lot of people. Nobody really wants to be on a budget. So I think it's important to understand when we're talking about a budget in this context, what we're not talking about is necessarily limiting your spending. What we're talking about is let's create visibility into what your spending needs are. And as a part of your planning process, we can work backwards and say, based on all the resources, your investment resources, income resources, here's how much money you can afford to spend. But also let's look at what's your lifestyle going to cost. And a lot of times the lifestyle actually costs less than what you can spend based on your plan. Sometimes lifestyle is more, but it's important you know that, and sometimes it matches up. But the word budget isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just need to create that visibility into what your lifestyle is going to cost you.
And that's such an important area that we help families with, is a lot of families are scared to spend in retirement. You start to turn off that paycheck, and then now maybe these are the years where we actually want to do more travel and spend a little bit more for a period of time. And just helping families be able to plan for that, see what that impact is short-term and long-term in their plan, how they're going to do it, gives them an awful lot of power.
8 ways people run out of money in retirement, how to avoid them. Number 2, unexpected healthcare costs. People sometimes, Loren, make assumptions about what Medicare will cover.
Yeah, Medicare is kind of in this black hole when it comes to the healthcare stuff because you're not eligible for Medicare until age 65. So in your working years, you have very little visibility into how Medicare works. But all of a sudden you turn 65 and most people are mandated to go on Medicare without really understanding all the moving pieces. In addition to that, you have to make decisions as far as what are you going to latch onto Medicare, the mainframe of the Medicare, to cover some of the supplemental healthcare costs. So there is a whole room of blind spots that could creep up to really derail people from a healthcare cost standpoint. And that's just from normal healthcare or Medicare standpoint, not to mention potential long-term care. There's a study that says 70% of people into retirement, age 65 and above, are going to need some kind of long-term care. And the cost of that care just continues to skyrocket and makes it really hard for people to afford.
And so many times families are used to what they maybe pay for their health care at work. They have no idea what gap health care coverage could look like before 65 or at 65, or even just how to quantify that long-term care risk in their plan. These are all things that we help families as we build your plan out. We want to help you understand, where does health care fit in? Where does long-term care and that risk fit in? To make sure that families are comfortable with that before they hit that retirement button. Those are all things you want to know to make sure you're planning for them.
And it's good to put some numbers around it. Fidelity does a study. Here's the 2025 Fidelity retiree healthcare cost estimate. They found that a 65-year-old may need $172,500 in after-tax savings to cover healthcare expenses in retirement. And if you look at where the spending comes from, according to Fidelity, there's a chart up on the screen. 47% is other expenses. They're saying 53% Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, and 10% prescription medications. So it's also good to put numbers around spending and understand the costs.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at such large numbers like $172,000, and you said the majority of those expenses are just normal healthcare expenses, right? We're not even talking about the extra expenses of maybe needing some memory care or longer term care. Those are just normal every day over the course of a 20 to 25 year retirement type of healthcare expenses. So it can be daunting to look at those numbers and be like, how am I ever going to do this? But because healthcare is so important, that's why we have a full-time Medicare and long-term care specialist on our team to help our families maneuver through all of those hurdles, because those surprises can really come up and bite you. We want to eliminate as many of those surprises as possible.
And it's so important that we're integrated as planners with our healthcare team to be able to help evaluate things like, hey, at this point where we show more for taxable income, that could actually increase our healthcare premium, both before 65 or as we think about IRMA, as somebody's on Medicare. And those are things we want to make sure we're making all those decisions, understanding the ramifications or the impact from one part of the plan to another part of the plan, which is where our team approach is great to be able to help families understand how this all fits together.
We're talking about 8 ways people run out of money in retirement and how to avoid them. Number 3, underestimating longevity. Here's some facts around that. Life expectancy for men age 65 right now in the United States, 83. Women who make it to age 65 can plan to live about 21 more years, age 86. But the nation's 90-year-old population, it's nearly tripled over the past 3 decades, reaching 1.9 million in 2010. So people are living longer. There's some interesting stats too about couples living into their 90s at a much higher rate as well. So something that cannot be overlooked when planning for retirement.
And those numbers could surprise people, because a lot of times when you talk to people about longevity right now, they're saying that people aren't living as long. But when we look at over the last 3 decades, nearly tripled, that's significant. So that is something we have to take into consideration when we are putting together your plan. When you are putting together your plan. When we plan for the families and individuals that we serve, we're planning out to age 100. Now, there's not too many people that we work with to say, hey, Clint, I want to live until age 100.
So you can stop scrolling at this point.
Yeah.
Stop around 85, 90.
Right. So we can do it custom. We do it custom or whatever, but we want to make sure that it does work out to age 100, because even though people are living longer, it doesn't necessarily mean people are living healthier. In the last 3 to 5 years of many people's lives is the most expensive time frame with extra healthcare costs. So we want to make sure all of that is accounted for so you can get the most out of your go-go, your slow-go, and your no-go years in retirement.
Coming up, more threats to retirement, including inflation and outdated investment strategies.
Dreaming of retirement but not sure how to get started? You've been searching for answers online, talking to friends, even getting advice from coworkers, but everyone says something different. You need answers for your situation. Schedule a personalized one-on-one conversation with a retirement planner at RetireReadyCall.com. Get answers to your questions on your time from the comfort of your home. Stop dreaming of retirement and take the first step towards retiring with confidence today. Go to RetireReadyCall.com.
Before Angie could live out her retirement bucket list, she had questions.
What are my risks? Am I able to have enough money to retire? And Social Security, when do I pull that?
So Angie turned to the Merkle Retirement Planning team.
I needed a health plan. They help with that. I needed a tax plan. They help with that. And of course, the financial plan. They help with that. So I have all these coaches. When we had the end result, I was ready.
Merkle Retirement Planning, helping turn your questions into confidence.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. I'm Molly Nelson here with Clint Huntrods and Loren Merkle. They're both certified financial fiduciaries. Loren is a certified financial planner and Clint has a PhD. We are talking about 8 ways that people run out of money in retirement and how to avoid them. Let's look at number 4, ignoring inflation. Clint, this one can sneak up on people.
Yeah, sometimes people, if they have not seen their plan concretely, they have a hard time understanding how much their monthly expenses just staying the same could increase across their retirement. Let's take a couple who's going to spend $5,000 per month. When they enter into retirement, if we take that same $5,000 increased by inflation of just 3%, obviously it could be more, once they get 20 years down the road into retirement, it would take $9,000 a month to live the same lifestyle that $5,000 gets them at the verge of retirement. So you can just start to see how that almost doubles over a 20-year period of time. That's something families often are surprised by.
And as if that's not hard enough to plan for, I'm going from $5,000 over time to $9,000 a month. That's just using 3% inflation increases across the board. But as we know, not all costs rise at the same rate. Healthcare expenses are a prime example. Depending upon the study that you look at, healthcare costs increase 6, 7, even 8% annually, and that's a big chunk of a lot of people's retirement budgets. So we have to take all of this into consideration as we're making a plan, a coherent plan for how to beat inflation.
And how to avoid it. I do feel a little bit like a broken record, but really you plan for inflation, you draw up plans, you drop scenarios for people, and you put inflation into that lifestyle budget.
Yeah, we want to make sure we understand what that could look like. We also want to understand how that impacts the different phases of retirement. You might have different spend levels at those points, and that's where we can help families in planning for, let's do all those things those first 10 years, and we can start to think about additional distributions early on. And then as your expenses maybe start to slow down with your lifestyle, we're still increasing for inflation, but we can start to see how those phases also fit in.
It's also one more reason why retirement planning is not set it and forget it. Because you start out retirement $5,000 a month, and then maybe 3-4 years into it, it's like, wow, that's tight. $5,000 a month doesn't quite get it done. But along the way, we are getting together and we are talking about what does your lifestyle look like now? What are those cost requirements now? How is your investments doing? What do your income resources look like? And true that up each and every year. So there aren't this high cost all of a sudden one day we wake up and we can't afford the lifestyle anymore.
Let's talk about ways people run out of money in retirement. Number 5, outdated investment strategies. Do you see this a lot, Clint, when you first start working with people?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times families have invested during their working years, and the strategies that have gotten them in that period of their life are not always going to be the best strategies as they transition to and through retirement. So it's always great to review, what is your appetite for market risk? How does that sync up and fit with your overall retirement plan? Especially as you're on the verge of retirement, that's where families want to evaluate everything, get a good analysis of how much risk you're taking, which is something that we help families through. And most of the time we walk through that with families, they say, I've never seen this before. Sometimes they're, yeah, that's about right. That's what I thought. Sometimes they say, whoa, I had no idea I was taking that much market risk. So it's always good to take that assessment and then evaluate each strategy to make sure it's still going to be a good fit as their life is starting to change.
But that one's so hard for a lot of people because good savers, they've been saving for 30, 40 years, and they get really accustomed to what those strategies are. And after a 40-year saving pattern, they've had some success, a lot of success. You've built up a really good nest egg for your retirement, and you're saying, these are tried and true strategies. These work. Why would I make a change all of a sudden now? And it's not like here you are, you're working and then you're retired, so let's change everything. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is let's match up your investments, your investment strategy with the phase of life and your intentions, what you're trying to accomplish. When you're working, you're just trying to put money in. So the market takes a big dive. That actually helps you when you're putting money in because you're buying shares at a lower price. But when you retire, and you're taking money out and the market takes a dive, that hurts you, and it hurts you really bad. And that's one of the things we have to take into consideration as we're building this new retirement investment strategy.
You talked a little bit about annuities too. Some people invested in those maybe in the 80s. Well, the landscape for that has changed a lot.
Yeah, a lot of those strategies that maybe made sense 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it's just a great time to start to review. Interest rate environment has changed. The way that the market operates has changed. Those are all things it's good to freshen up your investment portfolio and look to see, hey, is there anything out there that's maybe better or could better improve you in the position you're in as you're heading into retirement?
Let's look at number 6 on our list of ways that people run out of money in retirement. Poor timing. You alluded to it a little bit just a moment ago, Loren. The market, here's one thing I've learned, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. Nobody knows exactly when the next drop's going to be, but if it's your first year of retirement and all your money is in the market, that's scary.
I have been doing this for a very long time. I've been helping people retire, and I don't believe there's one time over the last 26 years that somebody came to me and said, you know, I really want to retire, Loren, but I want to wait until the market's high before I want to retire. People want to retire when they want to retire, independent of things they can't control, like legislation or market movements. And creating an investment strategy that is built for your retirement, your ambitions, your lifestyle is how you can do that. No matter what this crazy market does, whether it's up high or it's low, you can retire, have the lifestyle you want to, if you create that investment strategy that works with what it is you're trying to accomplish from a retirement standpoint.
It's so important to be proactive there. I think a lot of times families feel like, well, I'm at the whim of the market. There's nothing that I can do. Well, you can control the way that your portfolio is going to respond when the market does what it's going to do. You can't necessarily control the market. And that's something that families maybe haven't heard before. And it's a good time to start to shift towards that new approach as they're nearing into retirement, a potential place where they're now going to start to take money out instead of just saving and growing those assets like they have over time. That's a very big change. It's a lifestyle shift. Your investment portfolio should also be shifting to make sure it's ready for that new phase.
And with some of the things that happen globally are happening globally, people get nervous about the markets, understandably so. And I think that's a lot of what you've been talking to people a lot lately on Retire Ready calls is volatility in their retirement.
Yeah, a lot of families are concerned. Hey, I'm getting closer and closer to retirement, and the market feels like it's more volatile than it's ever been. And so when we're having those Retire Ready calls with families and getting to know them for the first time, many times they're saying, hey, it just doesn't feel like these conditions are right. It doesn't feel like I'm well positioned to be able to retire. But meanwhile, my lifestyle, and my spouse is retired, or my friends are retiring, things are going on at work, and families are saying, hey, I want a plan that can help me see what that roadmap looks like so that I can confidently retire no matter what happens with the market. So that's something that almost every call that we talk with families on, the Retire Ready call, most of the time the market's coming up and volatility has been top of mind lately.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you can talk about in a Retire Ready call. Maybe you can talk to a retirement planner about your concerns. You might even leave the call with an action step that could help you feel better about where you're at with your retirement. You can schedule a Retire Ready call right now by going to RetireReadyCall.com. We've still got to talk about 8 ways people run out of money in retirement and how to avoid them next.
We are dreaming of retirement, but we have so many questions.
How can I figure out if I have enough money saved for retirement?
What is the roadmap for growing my investments without taking too much risk?
What steps can I take now to lower my tax bill in retirement?
I'd like to retire before 65, but wonder if I can afford health care. Where can I learn about my options?
Our Journey to Retirement workshop is here for you. Go on an interactive retirement journey through the eyes of a hypothetical couple faced with real retirement. Watch as they build a plan that covers the 6 essential pillars of retirement: lifestyle, income, taxes, investments, healthcare, and legacy. You'll see how our retirement planners help John and Sue make the most of their retirement savings and live out their retirement vision. Sign up for the online Journey to Retirement workshop today at retirewithmerkle.com, and you'll be one step closer to retiring with confidence.
Welcome back to Retiring Today. I'm Molly Nelson here with Loren Merkle and Clint Huntrods, and we're talking about 8 ways people run out of money in retirement, how to avoid them. We've covered 6, we've got 2 more. Here's number 7, ignoring taxes. I'd like to ignore taxes.
It'd be really nice. I'm not sure.
Tell anybody.
I'm not sure it's something we can really ignore.
Okay.
It would be nice though.
Let's not ignore taxes, and we definitely can't ignore them in retirement. But one way to at least prepare for them is to understand what's coming. And if you have a lot of money in pre-tax accounts, a big tax bill could be coming.
Yeah, it's always good to just assess how have you saved so far. Are you tax diverse? Which means, hey, we maybe saved pre-tax, but do we have any Roth dollars? Do we have any more non-qualified assets? And just starting to think about what that potential tax bill is going to be down the road. And just know that on all those dollars saved pre-tax, you can't get that full amount back. You're going to have to subtract out what it is that you owe Uncle Sam. So you think about that dollar amount you've saved, you could subtract out 12%, 22%, depending on what tax bracket you're in. The amount you saved pre-tax is a balance you want to be aware of, but just know the net amount of what you can actually get out of that is what's going to be really important. And that's where that proactive tax planning becomes so critical.
And if that's not bad enough news, it gets worse. Whereas the better of a saver that you have been over the course of your working years, the higher tax bill you're probably going to have if you choose to ignore tax planning and you don't incorporate tax planning within your overall strategies. If you have $1 million of pre-tax saved money over the course of a 20-year horizon over the course of your retirement, it could add up your tax liabilities to $400,000, some people $500,000 plus if you don't implement some kind of effective tax planning strategy. So could we ignore taxes? No. Can we ignore tax planning? Yes, but you're not going to want to.
Okay, so that's the bad news. We're all going to pay taxes. That's the real news. That's the reality. The bad news is that tax bill you just talked about. But the good news, here it comes. There is stuff you can do to maybe lower that tax bill, but you can't wait until, or you shouldn't wait till 65. I don't say there's exceptions to all of this, but it's better to start earlier rather than later.
Yeah, the sooner you start, the better. You start to think about how you can get dollars into that Roth bucket where they can grow tax-free. That becomes really valuable. Another big shift that families find in retirement is sometimes they now have more flexibility on what their taxable income is. So maybe they have a reduction in what federal bracket they're going to find themselves in. Well, that's something that they could keep their tax bracket as low as possible, but they need to be aware of what that potential ramification down the road could be once the government starts to force those distributions out at RMDH. So families can now start to really get ahead of that and start to think more proactive. And many times retirement is a good event to then start to get more flexibility on taxable income and start to implement things like Roth conversions.
Number 8 on ways people run out of money in retirement. Here, this is a big one. It's no plan. And I kind of think if you have no plan, then you're kind of guessing. I think I can spend this much each year. I think my tax bill might be that, but I'm not sure. Then RMDs hit. It feels like it would be a guessing game to have no plan.
And that's one of the reasons so many people have increased anxiety as they look to make that transition into retirement. This should be an exciting time for you. This should be a time where you're on the doorsteps of not having to drive to work on a Monday morning. You can do whatever you want. You can go watch the grandkids. You can take a trip. That's exciting. But then there's all these looming questions that you have to answer, and you don't have the answers at your disposal because most people don't have a plan. It's a very small percentage of people who make that transition to retirement that actually have a plan. But if you do, if you have a plan, then it's not somebody sitting across the table from you. It's not your advisor saying, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I think you're going to be okay. How many times do we hear that, Clint? Somebody's working with an investment advisor, they come see us, and they say, my advisor says I'm going to be okay. But Clint, am I?
They have questions and they're uncertain and they're just lacking confidence in those decisions. And that's where when we're able to help show them what their plan looks like, now all of a sudden their confidence goes up. They say, I can see it for myself. I believe I understand. And now I know the decisions in front of me and can make those with a lot of confidence. And that's fun. That's exciting for us.
It's really exciting for us, but it's also really exciting for them because for the very first time ever, for most people, they get to see what their written retirement plan looks like. Now for us, we call that the RetireSecure roadmap. And there's 6 pillars in that RetireSecure roadmap. There's the lifestyle pillar, which is that fun stuff. That's the stuff that you look forward to once you do retire. And then the other 5 pillars are the financial pillars to enable you to live your lifestyle pillar, the income, the taxes, the healthcare, investments, and the legacy pillars. All 5 of those help you live that lifestyle pillar. That's what a plan looks like. All 6 of those pillars should be in your plan. And I can tell you, your confidence level skyrockets when it's not us telling you you're going to be okay, but you get to see it. And you get to see how much money you can take out from where, when, and that you're not going to run out of money before you run out of time.
And you can really see how some of the things that we've talked about today and those 8 ways that somebody could run out of money are addressed in a comprehensive plan. So we help families think about what's inflation going to be long term. How do we plan for the healthcare expenses that you're going to have? How do we make sure that your investments are synced up with your retirement plan? And these are things that as families start to understand how that all works, they start to get a lot more confident about those decisions that they have. We had a family just recently, and as we started to build their plan out, the individual that went to work, she said her boss noticed she was acting differently because she had more confidence to say, hey, I don't need to keep doing this if things aren't going right. So she had a lot more confidence. It changed the way she walks, the way she carried herself at work, just by having that plan and that more confidence.
I can tell you, going through your working day when you know you don't have to be there that day is a way different experience than knowing you have to be there in order to earn that paycheck.
Especially when you get to a certain point in your life, right? We're not quite there yet. We're working towards that feeling, but when you're in whatever age that is for you, 55 plus, you can go to work knowing you've got a plan if and when you're ready to say, yep, I'm ready to go ahead and push that retirement button. That's a good feeling. When people call, they have a Retire Ready call with you. I'm guessing a lot of times when you talk to them, Clint, they don't have a plan. So what kind of questions do they have about what a plan looks like for them?
I think a lot of the times families are most curious about, hey, I know I've got a tax bill. I don't really know what it is. And maybe the advisor that they're working with is more investment focused. And so many times they've heard about investments, but they kind of say, hey, I need to know more than that as I'm headed into retirement. So they're often asking questions more about income. How do I maximize Social Security? What do I do about this tax burden that I'm going to have in retirement? They want to have know more about healthcare and what that looks like. And so it's often not as much investment of a conversation when families are starting to ask more. That's really an area where they're starting to say, hey, I need more than just an investment advisor. I'm looking for an actual retirement planner.
Yeah, I think that a lot of questions are answered by a comprehensive retirement plan. So you may have some questions after what you saw today. A Retire Ready call is a great first step. You can schedule a Retire Ready call right now by going to retirereadycall.com. When you get there, you'll see a calendar. It's pretty simple. You choose a time and a date that works for you. Then you can have a conversation with the retirement planner. It's pretty low key, it's pretty low pressure, and really it can be about what's on your mind. This is Retiring Today, and we thank you for watching.
Anytime I have even the smallest question about my accounts or what effect the latest tax law might have on my situation, the Merkle Retirement Planning team is always there and quick to help. I'm so glad they treat you like family. I'm so happy to have such an excellent team working for my future and ensuring I do the best to achieve my financial goals.
Merkle Retirement Planning. Your retirement starts here.